Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. It's time for your weekly Calamity Jane live stream. James, how are you doing on this early spring and very wet day in LA? I've seen some of the videos.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of rain going on. LA's getting drenched. I myself am recovering from being sick. That's why we canceled last week because I couldn't hold a conversation without coughing my lungs out. But this week I'm doing a little better, so that's good. And LA is, yeah, getting drenched right now.
Yeah,
So
yeah, without a
so
doubt.
far, yeah, so far we're okay. Meet and I are okay on our side of town, but I know that there's certain areas of LA where there's like people are on pins and needles wondering if they need to evacuate their homes or not. So that sucks. And
Yeah,
hopefully,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, yeah, and hopefully it won't get to that point where a lot of people have to do that and seek shelter elsewhere outside of their homes. But it's kind of where we're at right now.
Yeah, I saw a video of the LA River, which, if you've never been to LA, it's basically an aqueduct that is
Hmm.
filled by just the tiniest little sliver of water. It's almost dry all
Yeah,
year round, but right now it is a raging river. I mean, it is the Mississippi. It is almost overflowing the entire aqueduct, and the aqueduct is huge. If you've seen Terminator 2 and the chase sequence with the motorcycle and the semi truck, you know how big the LA aqueduct is, and that
hmm,
is filled to almost capacity right now, based on some of the videos I was seeing. Crazy
yeah,
stuff. Crazy stuff.
yeah. It's just like you said. It's insane right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. It feels like it doesn't take much for the LA River to turn into a raging, mean uh, body of water that runs through the city. So yeah, I'm not surprised that it's actually kind of gone crazy a little bit. But hopefully it kind of maintains, and yeah, we'll see. Yeah, how are things over in Georgia?
We got a little bit of rain yesterday, and that's about it. it's
Oh, okay,
it's in the 50s. Very manageable, very reasonable right now. Um, and yeah, I mean, no complaints on this end, honestly.
that's good.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good. That's really good. Um, well, I guess I'll jump into doing some artwork stuff for Calamity Jane while we talk about whatever comes to mind in our
yeah.
stream of consciousness stream.
Extravaganza du jour.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am still I'm still doing I'm still stuck on Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I am 102, 104 hours, I can't remember. Over 100 hours into it at this point, and
Mhm.
I'm on the last chapter, making strong headwinds. I feel like I could probably finish the main story in less than 10 hours at this point if I just sort of push through.
Mhm.
It has been my experience with the Xenoblade Chronicles games, though, that you're there is a massive jump in the final dungeon. So you'll spend the entire game over leveled and everything will be trivial, and then you'll get to the final dungeon and the final boss, and it's just an absolute, just they wreck you. And so there is a grind, there's a final dungeon grind that always seems to plague the Xenoblade games. And so rather than doing that this time, I'm just going to go ahead and grind out the side quests and do all
Mhm.
that stuff because it's good. I mean, there's a couple in particular that I want to talk about actually, um, but just go ahead and really like capture all of the story and basically hit max level, because like max level is about level 100, I think 99 or 100, and I'm at 77 right now, so I'm over
Oh, okay.
75% of the way there, obviously. And so I think if I just continue doing the side quests as I work my way through the main story, I should be pretty close to max level by the time it's time to take on the final dungeon. Which
Mhm.
I think is honestly the way they actually balance it, right? You know, your reward for doing everything as the final dungeon isn't awful.
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
But no, it remains a really compelling game. I mean, I don't think we talked about this on the stream. At the end of one of the fifth chapter, which is not relevant for anybody who's not played it, but it like there's a boss fight, and then like a half-hour long cutscene, a boss fight, a half-hour long cutscene, and then a full feature-length cinematic, 90 minutes long, followed by another boss fight, and then another 30-minute cinematic. So I had no idea that this was coming, right? And then wound up basically binging Xenoblade Chronicles 3 cinematics accidentally, leading up into it was sort of like one of the major turning points in the game. The ton of story things happen, ton of reveals. The truth is the story is actually, and I know I'm glad we're recording this because this is not something I say often, and I'm sure people will want the proof. I'm enjoying the story of this game. I can count on maybe two hands the number of games that I'm like, I am actually finding this story compelling, and it is one of them. And I think a lot of it has to do, and I think we've talked about this on the stream. I know we've talked about this, that it's got a very strong anti-war message, and how dehumanizing and awful and meaningless war is, and how it just deprives anybody who gets involved in it of any sense of agency or individuality or frankly life, right?
Yeah.
But it goes also beyond that, because it's not so simple as just war is bad, right? Because there are characters who get caught up in the war who have compelling reasons, whether they're just frankly afraid of a life beyond the status quo, right? War for them is almost the abusive codependent relationship, Then you've got the people who do break the shackles of war and then regret it and seek to like, they go, oh my God, I made this decision. I thought it was the right decision at the time, and now I've decided I don't like it. And then you've got the people who, navigate bravely forward into the future, but it's like, the only thing I've known is war. And there's entire side quests about learning to farm and learning to like just be a regular person. And the way it is interesting, and I don't want to spoil too much, but the using war as a metaphor for an abusive relationship is something that comes up multiple times over the course of the game, and I find it extremely compelling. I don't know. It is one of my favorite video game stories in recent memory, maybe in a long time. Absolutely in a long time, and just really, really, really getting into it, and anyway. So that's largely what I've been doing.
Nice. Well, let's. I know you want to talk about side quests in that game too. I'll share my screen. I'll start doodling, and we'll go more into side quest talk as well. So let's see here.
So what are we looking at for tonight?
For tonight, Calamity is mourning.
Okay.
So I'll be working on this particular pose, where she pretty much says no, and so I'll work on this asset, and we kind of have some assets already, kind of in the same pose, sort of, that I might borrow from. Let me see if I can actually paste it in here or not. Yeah, I mean, she's kneeling here, so I'll probably use something similar to this, but we'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of where we're at for tonight, and yeah, we'll keep on going as I work on this particular pose. So
yeah,
as far as Xenoblade Chronicles, though, how you're about? Are you what 100 something hours in now?
100 and a little over 100 hours.
Wow, and you're almost done with the game. I actually thought you'd be like 300 hours in because there is the Xenoblade Chronicles game. But
yeah.
I wonder if you're being extra. Maybe you're extra efficient, or maybe the game isn't as long as a sweeping epic as I thought it would be compared to just what I've heard about Xenoblade Chronicles in general, like how long those games are.
I mean, I'll be honest. I've always been able to 100% those games at around 120 hours.
Okay.
So,
all right. So that includes like even like Dragon Quest, for example. Those games are around 100 hours as well.
Yeah. I think Dragon Quest 11 was the last one I played all the way through, and it ended up being around 111 hours. Dragon Quest VIII clocked in slightly under 100 hours, but it was plus 80, right? Yeah, Dragon Quest XI was an interesting beast because it's almost two complete games. You finish the game and you even get the credits, and then it basically unlocks a whole second story where everybody goes back in time, and it's the wackiest thing, the structure of that game. I ended up liking it a great deal. Obviously, as far as Dragon Quest, the pinnacle is still Dragon Quest VIII, but 11 was excellent, and I don't usually finish Dragon Quest games. I mean, I enjoy them, but they tend to be pretty long, and they tend to get really grindy. Most of them get really grindy. Dragon Quest VII was the worst offender. I really liked the game a lot, but there was just so much grinding in that game. I finally just, it's like, I'm not having fun anymore. And so my rule, if I'm not having fun, I stop. And so I stopped. And
which is admirable. I wish I could do the same thing. I mean, I guess I do. I'm better at it. You've given me the mental note and freedom of saying, yeah, it is okay to actually say no to a game and actually break it off. You've actually kind of alleviated that guilt a little bit for me. But yeah, I still admire how you can just hit the eject button like that on a game. So anyway,
yeah.
That's just an aside.
I'm very good at hitting eject buttons. Probably a little bit too good at hitting the eject buttons, but because I have in the past gone back to games and went oh, I think I hit the eject button on this too fast.
Yeah.
But no, Xenoblade Chronicles. I think the third one will come in probably closer to 150. It's actually on the longer side.
Okay.
Because I've still got, a ton of side quests I'm doing, and there's a bunch of side quests that I'm seeing online that I don't even have access to yet, so I'm going to have to try to figure out how to unlock those. But yeah, I feel like I could power through and get to the end game in less than 10 hours at this point if I was really pushing hard. But I'm not. I mean, I'm not trying to rush the game. I'm enjoying living in this world for a little bit, and what is the point in running through it if I'm enjoying my time there? And it's honestly, even if I do, it ends up being 150 hours. It's still less than the amount of television I've watched in my life. I mean, I'm re-going through the X-Files right now, and I'm just about wrapped up with season 4, and that's 25 episodes a season in the first 4 seasons at 45 minutes each. I mean, look, I'm already, borderline 100 hours on season 4 of the X-Files, and the X-Files is 11 seasons and 2 movies. So, it is as much of a commitment of time as Xenoblade Chronicles is, more so if I actually continue on with this rewatch. So
I'm surprised you're still working on X-Files. I thought by now you'd be done with your revisiting of it. But yeah, I mean, I guess it just depends on what you're splitting your time with. So yeah, and Xenoblade will do that.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what it boils down to right now. As I've got really, really lost into Xenoblade Chronicles right now. So just been enjoying that. Yeah, it's it took me by surprise. We talked about this. I played it for about 20 hours and got distracted by other things. I'm pretty sure what it was Monster Hunter Rise is what distracted me.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of sat there as I continued to drift from game to game. And then I got the Amiibo figures, and that just came out for the game, and it sucked me right back in. And now I've been going at it pretty hard. And I say it'll be about 150 hours, and then I forget that they added an entire new storyline as part of a DLC package, and I forgot that I had purchased the DLC package, I guess. So I started playing the game, and I get all these notices. Oh, all of the DLC is ready to go for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I'm like, wait, I bought this? I don't even remember buying this. The only thing I can
Oh
imagine is
man.
one of the things I do is I'll get really drunk and not on purpose, not with the intent of doing this, but I'll go to a
Mm-hmm.
party or whatever, and then I'll drunk buy video game stuff. Some people like drunk Amazon
Sure.
buy, some people drunk,
Uh-huh.
you know, I drunk video game buy. That's how I wound up getting the Devil's Third for the Wii U, if you remember that game.
The
Um,
Devil's Third. No, I'm not familiar with that game. I didn't have a Wii U, so I'm completely out of
oh,
the loop
okay,
with Resident.
okay, yeah, it was
Yeah.
a. Do you remember I don't remember his name off the top of my head. The guy who did the Ninja Gaiden reboots. And I think he did the
Okay.
original game too. But anyway, so he went and made another game sort of in that vein called The Devil's Third, which may be one of the worst games ever made. And
Oh, geez.
the Wii U, Nintendo at this point was just throwing Hail Marys everywhere. And they knew that this guy had some clout. And they needed something a little bit more traditional, a little bit more sort of in the mainstream, the hardcore mainstream. And so they did an exclusive publish. I mean, they published the game, and it was not good. It was a bad game. Nintendo completely disavowed it. Shadow released it on the Wii U, and one night, it was such a notorious train wreck. In the news, like I got drunk. I was like, I can't help myself, so I bought it. And oh yeah, no,
Oh,
it
jeez.
was terrible. It was as bad as you would think it is. Um, it does kind of suck though. They did do a very very limited physical release of the game.
Okay.
And if you manage to get a hold of one of those, man, those things sell for a fortune.
Really,
Yeah,
with how bad of a game it is, it's still
it's
because it's
because
just a
yeah,
limited run.
yeah, it was such a limited run, and there's so much notoriety and sort of controversy over its development and its release, um,
Oh,
that there is almost a sort of slow moving train wreck effect where people kind of just want to have this, sort of like I have a Blu-ray of The Room. I mean, do I need a Blu-ray of The Room? No, but I want a
yeah.
Blu-ray of The Room. No, it's not a collector's piece the way that Devil's Third is,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but anyway, so yeah, I must have, and because I have no memory of buying the DLC for this, no memory whatsoever, and
Hmm.
so all I figured is I must have one night, one of the because they did it over the course of several waves. I must have gotten drunk, and one of the new waves just came out, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do this, and bought it, and then completely forgot about it because I clearly bought the bundle while I wasn't actually playing the game at the time.
Hmm.
And so when I turned it back on, I'm like, oh wait, I bought I bought this already. Oh okay. So,
Wow. So have you been playing the DLC on accident as you've been playing the main game? Like, does it kind of fold together, or are they separate
it's
entities
both. It's
altogether?
both. Some of the DLC integrates into the main game. They added two new characters that are okay. I neither one of them really are as cool as some of the just sort of the characters that are in the main in the base game.
Hmm.
They had a couple interesting ideas with them, but ultimately neither one of them are really. Yeah, and they added a couple of quality of life features in the DLC that weren't in the base game, and a couple of other new features that you wouldn't have without downloading it. So yeah, but I think the main draw is the entirely new separate storyline chapter that occurs completely separate of the main game. Like from the main menu, you actually have to go into a different sub menu to access the content. And when you try to
Okay.
start it, it actually gives you a warning that says if you play this before finishing the game, it will spoil a lot of the ending of the main game. So we recommend you finish the main game before playing this.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
And so I haven't obviously played it yet, but I have seen like one. I'm curious because we've talked about this in the past how the Xenoblade Chronicles games are kind of standalone projects, but there is a
Hmm.
larger meta narrative that connects all four
Yeah.
games together.
Hmm.
And one of the marketing images that I saw for it had Shulk, who is the protagonist of the first game, Rex, who is the protagonist of the second game, and Noah, who's the protagonist of the third one, all standing around holding their various swords crossed above them. I'm like, that's interesting. So I'm
That's
curious.
implying that's implying what's going to happen to DLC. Is what you're saying?
That's what I think. Yeah, and I'm very curious to see how it goes because I'd love to see Shulk and Rex in action again in Xenoblade. Because at this point, the only way you get to see Shulk in action is if you play Smash Brothers.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, but anyway, yeah, I've been thoroughly enjoying it. Um, and yeah, I don't have much else exciting to say in that regard. But in terms of things like the side quests, usually side quests are such disposable things, just a way to
Hmm.
pad playtime, right?
Yeah.
Um, but this game, they really feel integral to the overall experience. Um, they really flesh out the nature of the characters in this world, and the character relationships are actually something that's always been a part of the Xenoblade series. Since the very first game, they've got this thing called the Affinity Chart that shows you how every named character in the game is related to other characters, right? What their relationship status is, how much they like each other, etc., 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 how they're connected. And you know, there are a few characters that have a lot of backstory, but every character has like a little bit of a backstory.
Hmm.
Whether it's the lieutenant come, Arden rancher, or the rogue soldier who is going against the wishes of the commander of their colony, or and the side quests do such a good job of not only fleshing out the overall world that Xenoblade Chronicles is set in, but also the people who inhabit it. And it's the thing that it reminds me of in a weird way is Persona 5. Like
Hmm.
Persona 5, we talked about how what a good job that game does of making the world feel populated and alive in a very economical way.
Hmm.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3, it goes in a different but also effective route. So obviously the world is much bigger than in Persona 5, and there are not as many, like there's no like shadow characters like there are in Persona 5. Every character that's in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is modeled out, and
Hmm.
they walk around the space. And that can actually, in games, it can actually make the games feel less populated
Hmm.
because you're never going to make enough, really, realistically, you're never going to make enough characters to make a world look as populated as it really should be, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
But the way that they make the world feel alive, the way they make the world feel lived in, is the fact that every character, every named character in the game, has at the very least a small storyline and in a relationship with other named characters, right? And the way that they flesh that out is through these side quests. Like just actually shortly before being on this, jumping on the stream, I did a side quest where this one colony was scrounging for survival. They weren't part of the war machine anymore, and they had to feed themselves, and they were trying to learn how to farm and ranch. And there was
Hmm.
no combat in the game at all, in the side quest at all. You talk to them, you do a couple of mini games, you go to a different place, you buy books on how to ranch because there are communities that exist outside of the cycle of war that do know some of these things, and you come back and you help them domesticate the equivalent of cows in their world, and it's crazy, right? I mean, and it helps the world feel alive, and it helps really drive home the central themes of the game.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was just it's a very thoughtful game, a well thought out game, right?
Hmm.
the the messages and the themes that it's espousing are very much a part of the DNA of the experience and not something that's sort of superficially layered on top.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, which I mean, it's just I appreciate that a lot because so many games will pay lip service of some sort of larger message, but it's pretty clear that that was sort of layered on top of we want to make a first-person shooter, you know. But we also want to have this message. Okay, we'll make the stages, make the mechanics, and then we'll we'll justify the story after the fact, right?
Hmm.
The to me at least, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 feels like the world that they were constructing and the themes that they were wanted to talk about were built hand in hand with every other aspect of the game, and it all feels very unified and cohesive. And I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I just have really, really, really been enjoying it.
And so this, and then as far as your ranking, this is still the best one out of
Oh yeah,
all three now,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Hands down, it's the best one. I mean, honestly, it's two is a close second. I
Hmm.
really, really like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as well, but yeah, I think this one takes the prize right now.
Yeah, it's funny because when I've been playing the first one, the general story seems pretty. I mean, there's no major moral theme that's kind of happening. Feels very kind of tropey, apocalyptic type stuff has happened, and you're dealing with the aftermath. Like, and it's fine. It does the job, but yeah, it's funny how much more layering there is. Number three that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the thing
So.
that the yes, I agree. The storyline of Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is pretty tropey. I mean there are some as you get farther into the game, there are some interesting story threads that emerge. But
Hmm.
it's not nearly as integrated into the overall experience as 3 is. But the thing that blew me away about the original Xenoblade Chronicles is just the way the developers created a sense of scale in the game world, and it's something that is persisted across every entry in the franchise. Is a huge part of the fun for me of the game is kind of being a cartographer because you've got these massive worlds to explore and there you are, and this is like one of the best parts about Breath of the Wild, right? In Tears of the Kingdom, you've got this massive world to explore and you're rewarded for going into every single nook and cranny, right? And that was
Hmm.
that was
Hmm.
without a doubt my favorite part of Breath of the Wild was, hey, that's a rock, I'm going to try to climb it, and then almost
Yeah.
inevitably when you see a weird rock and you try to climb it, even if it's just a Korok seed at the top of it, you're always rewarded for your curiosity. And 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 honestly, that Breath of the Wild would not exist without Xenoblade Chronicles because
Uh-huh.
Monolith Soft, the team that does all the Xenoblade series, um, they're the ones who developed the open world technology that Breath of the Wild is built on, right? So
So wait, so Nintendo just made a handshake deal with them and said,
no,
"Hey,
they bought them outright. Like Xenoblade is a first party developer now. I mean, Monolith Soft is a first party developer of Nintendo now.
oh, so when Nintendo owned them, they said, hey, we need this open world thing for our next Zelda game." And
Mm-hmm.
huh,
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
And so, yeah, I am. I it is certain that Breath of the Wild would not exist in the way that it exists had Monolith Soft not um, sort of figured it out um, as they were working on Xenoblade Chronicles, right? And just sort of discovering the best way to encapsulate that sense of joy. And it's I know that a lot of people would say, well, MMOs have been doing that for a long time. I was like, I don't know. I never got that same sense of discovery with MMOs, personally.
Even with like Skyrim, never got that.
Well, Skyrim feels like such a lonely game
Hmm.
and um, and empty. I mean, you would find, I don't know what it is about Xenoblade Chronicles, and maybe it's just my own personal biases coming through, because
Hmm.
a lot of it obviously goes back into this discussion we've had about aesthetics. And I've always found the Elder Scrolls games to be unbelievably ugly and unappealing to look at,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, And so, obviously there is that factor at play, but I don't know. There's something about my memory of Skyrim. It doesn't like there are certain times you could get to these vistas and you could feel like, hey, I can go over there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it just seemed to me that in Xenoblade Chronicles, every time my memory of it, and even still persisting through the most current game, it just feels like every time I turned a corner, there was just something else amazing to look at. Whether it was a cool visual element rising up into the sky, or a whole slew and variety of new monsters, right?
Mm-hmm.
To see and kill, and I never got that sense of awe playing Skyrim. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's a massive game, and there's secrets hidden in random places. But it never felt as, I don't know, interesting to me as as Xenoblade Chronicles. And I think a lot of it is because of what you got to see. I mean, that whole franchise is built around these massive environmental features that are impossibly high, and these spires that are pointing miles into the sky, and it's just creating these surreal vistas that are impossible to see anywhere else, right? And and Skyrim, obviously, rightfully so, is a lot more grounded than that. And so when you climb a mountain, it basically looks like a mountain, right? When you climb a mountain in a Xenoblade Chronicles game, you're climbing on the back of a giant creature that's been dead for millions of years, and it's got plants growing on it, right? And and so it's just, I don't know, it's a different vibe, and it always ended up being a little bit more exciting to me as a result. So
yeah, it's funny. So when you're describing Breath of the Wild, so I can't attest to Xenoblade, but for Breath of the Wild, like you were saying, you see like this remote rock and you want to go, oh, what's over there? Well, I mean, I did that numerous times in Breath of the Wild, and I just fall off a cliff and die. I see it on screen. I went, this is the stupidest. Cause I think for the most part, you and I agree with Breath of the Wild, but my hatred for Breath of the Wild is so much. I guess. And maybe it's just showing my biases too, because I've had years and years of playing Zelda games and knowing what to expect. And then if they wanted to make Zelda open world, I know what to expect with an open world game. Sure, it's prettier. Sure, it looks great. The aesthetic is pretty. But I walk over to an edge of the mountain and go, yeah, I need to explore that because exploration, open world, I need to explore. Fall off a cliff and die. And I that's so there's a common theme here where Zelda has caused me physical harm in the real world, giving me injuries.
It has.
And then even the most recent version, it's ruined any joy I have of open world games, because every time I would do that, I didn't understand the fun in just falling off cliffs because I wanted to explore. I hated Breath of the Wild. I just could not get into it. I wanted to like it. I wanted to get into it. Between that and the weapon breaking, I just thought it was completely took all the wrong ideas from other games, and for some reason forced us to play it in Breath of the Wild. It's nothing like any of the other Zelda games for me. So,
well, you and I are old men shouting at clouds. I mean, there's no doubt about that, because it will go down as a classic, whether we agree with it or not.
Sure, I know. I totally in the wrong group on this one. Everybody loves that Breath of the Wild, and we're stuck with Tears of the Kingdom doing the same thing pretty much. So as far as I could tell, we're stuck with this for the next decade of Zelda style type of games, being this versus what I loved before, which was 20, 30 years of the good stuff. But that's also the beauty of it. You can go back and play the old ones. It's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's all good. But here's the other thing though. Is out of the two, I enjoyed playing Skyrim way more than I enjoyed Breath of the Wild. I found myself going, oh, there's a mountain, and I'd walk over to it. I didn't die. I'd actually climb to the top of the mountain, for example. So Skyrim was more successful, and it's blasphemous for me to say that, but that's how I didn't even care for. I don't like Bethesda games all that much. There was way too many other bugs that ruined my enjoyment of Skyrim that kind of were to me immersion breaking and game breaking. But with all that being said, exploration was never an issue in that game. I enjoyed exploring. just fine. But Breath of the Wild, chore. Ugh, hated it. Man.
I don't disagree with you. I mean about 90% of what you're saying with Breath of the Wild, but I did find the exploration compelling. For whatever reason, now I mean I say that with an asterisk. When it rained, I would just basically like, okay, well I'm gonna go warped somewhere where it's not raining because this is a waste of my time, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it happened too often. The number of times I'd be halfway up a giant mountain and it would start raining, and then I would slide and fall to my death. Like that
Ugh.
happened way too many times. And the fact
You
that I
warned
would
me,
have
but
to, what's that?
you warned me about that when I because you played it much earlier than I did. You gave
Yeah,
me a warning. Go well when you play the game, don't play it when it rains in
yeah,
certain spots, or you'll really hate the game. And you were right.
yeah,
I hated it
yeah,
when it rained and I couldn't grab on anything and I slip off and
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, totally. And I think for me, at least with and one thing, and this is one thing I will say about Xenoblade is, as a general rule, you're never punished for exploring, right?
Hmm.
Like there's no rain mechanic that makes it harder for you to climb up higher, right, into the
Hmm.
world.
Hmm.
There's no gotcha enemies that show up out of nowhere and kill you, right?
Yeah.
there's no like I mean, and they didn't carry this through, but even in Xenoblade Chronicles X, you actually play as an android, so there was no falling damage. You could fall
Hmm.
from the highest point in the game world, and you would never die, because within the
Okay.
fiction of the world, the character you were playing was an android. It's actually kind of clever. Um,
Hmm.
and so they've been experimenting with it. How can we just do nothing but reward you for exploration and never punish you for exploration? You know. Um,
So are you saying in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 you can't just fall off a cliff and die
You
that
can, but
easily?
you're almost hardly punished for it. You basically just respawn at the next spawn point, right? So
Oh,
you don't lose
okay.
experience, you don't lose items, you don't lose money. There's no
Hmm.
punishment. You respawn. The only punishment is you have to go back to a previous spawn point, and there are so many spawn points in that game. So
Oh, okay.
you never feel like, oh, if I fall off this bridge, it's going to cost me an hour of gameplay. No, you just go for it. If you fall off, you'll respawn. The the game seems to know, at least for me, where the line of trying to stay true to the game world ends and not forgetting that ultimately this is a game and you should be having fun
Yeah.
playing it. It does
Yeah.
such a good job of walking that line. And actually, it's something that all of the Xenoblade Chronicle games have done very, very well. Is um, trying to create this really interesting, compelling world, but then also going, oh no, wait, it's still a game, and it should be fun to play, right?
Mhm.
And I think that yeah, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 so far has, I'm 102 hours into it. I feel like nothing's going to change at this point.
Yeah.
Um, it just does a flawless job of walking that line. And some games are really good at it, and I can name 5 or 6 games, and
Mhm.
that are really really good of walking the line between, we want to create a compelling world that you believe, and oh, also this is a video game. A
Mhm.
series that we spent tons of time talking about on this one, the Batman Arkham series, is another one that I think does a
Mhm.
phenomenal job of walking that line
Yeah.
between, we want to create a compelling world, but also this is supposed to be a fun video game.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Um, well, uh, I think I'm in a really good spot for tonight. I feel like we're kind of cutting it short. It feels like
No,
time
we've been
flew
going for
by.
40 minutes, but time flies when
It's
you're having
crazy.
fun.
Yeah, or if you're reminiscing about falling off cliffs in
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, I think about a good spot with Calamity and her yelling to the heavens, losing her uncle. So I'll show you the original sketch one more time, and we'll close it out. So the original sketch was this, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I went through and just cleaned it up, and we ended up with the final pose here. Close that out. Yeah. So we're in good shape for
Cool.
tonight, I
That's
think.
looking really good. That's looking really good.
So yeah. So success
Excellent.
for tonight. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's perfect. So we'll wrap it up here. Just a usual closeout spiel. Consider heading over to calamityjane.rocks. That'll take you to our Patreon site where you can subscribe and join us on this crazy ass adventure to make this cartoon a reality. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook, which presumably you're watching us on right now. We also have an Instagram page where we are steadily populating with content with a bunch of different art pieces and fun little factoids and inside jokes about the development of the cartoon. And I am working on getting our Threads account up and running and populated, so hopefully we'll have something showing there as well. In the meantime, we should be back unless one of us has some issue, and it wouldn't be surprising if it was me. I mean, you've been drawing the short straw a lot, but
I have been drawing the short. I don't think it's you. I would, if I was a betting man, I would not put on you. It's me.
Okay, all right.
Man, I've had some really bad luck. Lately.
Yeah, I know. Well, hopefully we can call it quits on that one. But all things remaining equal, we'll be back at the usual time next Monday at 9:30 p.m. East Coast and 6:30 West Coast. So stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Good night.
Nights.